This week we're looking at number 7 in the series, studying the book of Romans, and this time we're examining the whole concept of overcoming sin. And immediately we delve into those ideas that we've often had of, okay, how do I fix it? How do I overcome sin? How do I change myself? And we might even think about these self-help books that are there on many subjects and apply that kind of idea to this. How do I overcome sin? What do I do to make things different? How do I change the way that I am? And then the focus, of course, is all wrong. In Romans chapter 6 here, Paul is focusing on the relationship, of course, between law and grace, but most especially thinking about the overcoming of sin. It's not a part of our natural process. It's not something that we accomplish. And so he, there in that chapter, takes us back to the way in which sin develops in our lives. It's not a question of saying, okay, let's do a lot more sin so that God can forgive us. That's one thing we shouldn't do. Verse 1, verse 15. But it is a question of thinking of how we are controlled. He almost takes us from being slaves to sin to being slaves to God, as if God wants us to be his slaves. But he wants us to understand, Paul wants us to understand that that is the way in which we are to think, that we are dedicated to God, and that the ways of sin no longer control us. We are not slaves to them anymore. We have been liberated by Jesus. Jesus himself said, anyone who has the Son is free indeed, free to make the right kind of choices. God in us, with us, working for us, helping us on the way, making good choices, but not able to fix ourselves. We just have to put ourselves in God's hand and say, Lord, I cannot overcome sin in my life by my own special, determined human effort. It has to come from you. But I am willing for you to come in and, as I often like to say, rewire my circuitry. Help me to think differently. Help me to live differently so that I don't want to do these things anymore. There are some good quotes in there for this time. The first one by Martin Luther. There is no justification without sanctification. You're not made right and kept right. You have to be continually kept right in your daily life. And there's no forgiveness without renewal of life, no real faith from which the fruits of new obedience do not grow. There has to be some kind of result. There will be some kind of result if the experience is real and genuine. That's what he's saying. And the victory over sin, maybe that's the wrong kind of focus. It does happen, but it's not this kind of true grit, grin and bear it kind of thing. It's God in us, healing us, changing us, remaking us once more. And as I put in the notes for this time, the danger is that if we are not careful, that if we objectify the mechanics of salvation, that will lead us to forget that God describes the at-one-ment in relational terms. He talks about love, forgiveness, attracting, drawing, seeking, caring, saving. Sin is not some kind of object that can be disposed of. It's a problem of relationships, a broken relationship, and that needs to be healed and restored. You can't just scrub away sin. We talk about sin in these objectivized terms as dirt or stain or something like that. No, it has to be a different way of thinking in which we understand that it is this break between us and God that we have caused, which we have chosen, in fact, and that God is reaching across that gulf, wanting to draw us back into a good and profitable relationship with him. That is the real meaning of the overcoming of sin. And the wind is blowing and making this a challenge. But I want you to think about that. How do we in our lives overcome sin? No, maybe that's even the wrong question. How does God come in and transform us? Think about these things.